have dry chafing in your crotch? Does your scrotum sack smell like day-old anchovies and pickle juice? Well, try Fresh Balls Lotion for Men. Hyperallergenic and clinically tested. Talc-free, paraben-free, aluminum-free. Anti-chafing and prevents wetness, and most importantly, it's made in the USA. Fresh Balls are happy balls. Affiliate link below.
How's it going, everyone? I'm the Woke Centrist, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about an incredible book by Thomas Sowell titled Black Rednecks and White Liberals. This is going to be the first part in a series in which I'll break down the various essays collected within the book. Before we dig into this, I'm going to give you a little background information on how I came across this gem. I first heard about this book on the Joe Rogan Experience. Hunter Motz was a guest on the show, and one of the topics that they discussed was about the cultural evolution and the origins of African American culture. Hunter used many examples in this book to defend the notion that intelligence differences are largely a cultural phenomenon rather than racial. This piqued my interest, and down the rabbit hole I went. Now, because I'm a cheap bastard and I prefer reading on my Kindle, I don't have a nice physical copy that I can show you. However, with the power of wokeness, I will manifest a digital representation for you using woke magic. Now, time for a little background information on Thomas Sowell. So he's an American economist turned social theorist and political philosopher. He's also an African American who was born in Alabama, so I guess that makes him able to talk about black rednecks. Just to let you know, Sowell makes some pretty harsh criticisms of Southern culture in general. In Black Rednecks White Liberals, Sowell attempts to dispel some common misconceptions behind race relations in the United States. He believed that there are no real solutions to a lot of these problems, but he believes the best way to proceed would be to incorporate value-based trade-offs. The first essay in this book dives into the origins of African American culture, which happens to be Southern white culture. The vast majority of early settlers who had populated the South originally hail from the borderlands of northern England, along with the Scottish Highlanders as well as Ulster County, Ireland. These areas were turbulent, lacking basic law and order. They were a scrappy bunch that lived fleeting lives and indulged in pleasantries whenever possible. Sexual promiscuity was the norm, and they often married young due to the onset of early pregnancies. Their culture ran on honor. Personal slights often led to violence in the streets. Defending one's honor through murder was common. The most notorious violent act that Southerners were notorious for was the act of lynching. According to Sowell, he sources that more whites were lynched than blacks, but that probably accounts for lynchings that occurred in their countries of origin. Another negative aspect that Sowell expounds upon is their lack of entrepreneurship. Southerners only produced 20% of the butter and about 1% of the cheese, despite the fact that they owned 40% of the dairy cows. Most Northerners saw these missed opportunities, and they migrated to the South and up and opened and operated businesses. Successful Southern businesses often had Northern business partners or had learned how to run a business from a Northern colleague. Southerners would often neglect infrastructure, culminating with poor road conditions and the lack of bridges over rivers and streams. They'd often argue that in order to save time and labor, they would just ford across them. If the river was too high, attempts to ford across the river would often have fatal consequences. When compared to the North, Southerners didn't weigh education with as much importance. 1/5 of the Southern white population was illiterate in the 1850s, while only 1% were illiterate in New England. The North had 4 times as many schools, pupils, and newspapers, than the South did in 1851. This led to Southern dependency on Northern innovation. Only 8% of the patents filed in 1851 were by Southerners. Regarding the hot-button issue of race and IQ, Sowell asserts, quote, "In short, some kinds of cultures tend to produce lower mental test scores, whether the people in those test scores are black, or white American, or European," unquote. He gives various examples that culture shapes intelligence. One of those glaring examples that he gave was during the Civil War. Black soldiers from the North had higher intelligence test scores than both white and black soldiers from the South. Many traditions and cultural affectations thought to be uniquely African American, in fact, originate from Northern England. The tradition of jumping over the broom for marriages actually came from a pagan tradition brought over by white Southerners. The Black Dialect is a variation of a Southern dialect which has origins overseas. Words like dis for this, day for they, dat for that, ax for ask, all originates from Northern England. Once the slaves were freed, teachers from New England came down to the South to become instructors for the newly freed slaves. They were trying to attempt to remove some of the vices they saw instilled within them through Southern culture and planned to address it by using a Northern puritanical approach. Sowell thinks that the Civil Rights Act was a detriment to blacks and that it reverted them back into their Southern redneck roots. In the book, he points to various facts that show a regression in the family structure and the education system that may correlate to the degradation. Another thing to note that slaves from the West Indies were not imparted with Southern culture and had transplanted themselves in northern states when slavery was abolished in their region. Unlike the blacks in the South, they owned many of their own businesses, had higher mental test scores, as well as education levels. In 1970s New York, black families that had ancestry in the West Indies had a 28% higher income than other blacks in the area. They were also underrepresented in the prison population. So this essay is packed with so much information that I implore you to check out the book yourself. There are a few things I didn't see eye to eye on Sowell. He criticizes hip-hop as an influencer of culture, but I believe hip-hop is a product of culture. There's many other cultures that listen to hip-hop and they don't emulate it, so it's a product of culture, not an influencer. It's just another form of entertainment. Alright, well, that wraps up the first part of the series. If you found any of this at all interesting, I do have an affiliate link below so that you can purchase the book. I would like to make a shout out to the Mixed Mental Arts podcast with Brian Callen and Hunter Motts. If you would like to check them out, they're on iTunes as well as mixedmentalarts.co. I'll also leave a link down below so you can check them out. If you want to support this channel, please click on the like and subscribe buttons. You could also follow me at Twitter at WokeCentrist. I would also love to hear your thoughts. Please leave them down in the comments below. And thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for part 2.